Good morning, Mark.
Rồi sau đây bong bong nghe
Đây mà đã.
Được xua bong bóng ở kia, được xua
cha bong sau đây hay haไปประhaiตะออกเนี่ยนะบองบอง
rồi lại tuần tra và vậy thì
Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in a few minutes. All right, I'm going to give you a 2-minute warning before we get started. Okay, everyone, let's get started. I know that we're still missing a few people, but we'll get started as well. So I want to, any questions so far from last 3 days? And we will have time at the end for you to ask questions and so forth, but any questions? Everybody's okay? Let me ask this question as we get started today. Is there a appraisal process in Cambodia real estate? Appraisers are usually sent by the bank to make sure, especially when they're borrowing money, that building or even commercial or residential is worth the money the buyer's paying because they're giving the loan. Is there a appraisal process in Cambodia? Yes, I think most of the country has some type of appraisal process. Anybody could share with me whether you have an appraisal process or not?
Good morning, Mark.
Well, good morning.
Yes, there is such a process.
Okay, good.
So normally the amount that borrower can get from the bank up to 80%.
80%
of the property value. in the US, from what I heard, they can borrow up to 95%. Is it correct?
It all depends. It all depends on what appraised at. And it's more of a type of the loan. Usually, even US, a lot of times it's 80% usually is the value that they could lean towards the building. But I mean, so 80 is close, but it could go up to 95%. And sometimes borrower could borrow 100% of the purchase. Depends on what type of loan. There are some government-backed loan that are allow you to buy up to borrow 100% of it. So what I wanted to do right now is what I'm going to do is I'm going to load, and for your sample, let me see. I'm going to load you a sample of what appraisal looks like in United States. So this is just a sample of what the appraisal report looks like. Okay, it is loaded. I'm going to open it up a little bit. I'm just going to share you just a little bit. Appraisal report is done by in United States appraiser who has a special license. To become an appraiser is harder in United States than to become a real estate agent. So this is just a residential appraisal report. So appraiser come out to the property and they prepare this report. It's fairly extensive, and they have a appraisal report that's uniform, meaning that most of the appraisal report looks the same. They have to use this standardized form, and they look at it from two different ways. Of course, they're going to come and look at the property. And what they do is they do a comparable. They do two types of appraisal usually. One is called comparable, and one is other one you could look at it. So these are comparable. So they use a comparable residential appraisal report. Here's the subject property, 209th Street, and these are the comparables that they use. Comparable sales. And they do some comments on here. And then they're going to tell you what their opinions are. The comments are here. So this is what the appraisal report looks like. And these are these are all templated. And you could take a look as a sample. So this one, you could use it, but please do not share with other people. I have a permission from the owner of this appraisal that I could use this, but please do not share with everybody except for being class. And right now they do this market condition. They're going to tell you what the market looks like. So they could do that. And they do building sketches. And, they could include, they might include photos of each room and so forth. So this is a residential appraisal that what it looks like. Okay. So that's that. I did include this on the chat room right now, so you could see that on the chat room. So appraiser could be part of the purchase, like you said. It could be one obstacle, because if the appraisal report is low, meaning if the appraisal comes in lower than the purchase price, then you have an issue. because either the buyer have to bring more money in if you borrow money, or the seller have to reduce the price. You might have to renegotiate. So appraisal could be one of the biggest obstacle or can be a problem during the purchase as well. As a buyer's agent, you do not have a lot of saying in the appraisal report, but nowadays, if the appraisal report is low, and if you're able to use in United States MLS to prove the appraiser is wrong, you could try to prove that as well. But in United States, it's very, very rare case the appraiser will change their mind and go along with yours. So appraiser is one of the biggest obstacles that we have in part of the transaction if somebody's borrowing money. But buyer broker needs to understand that, and buyer agent need to be able to explain that to the buyer as much as they can. So appraiser is that in Cambodia, I'm sure, like you say, you have appraisal as well. How about home inspection? Home inspection might not be a very norm in many of the countries. It's almost very unique to the United States. In some country, when there's a home inspection, a lot of times the home inspection is done by the seller, and seller fixes things that comes out of the home inspection. But in the United States, it is normal, most of the case, the buyer schedules a home inspection when they become to agreement. In United States in transaction, you come to agreement and sign contract when you agreed on, then you proceed towards closing. That might be a little different because in many countries, you continue to negotiate. You do not sign the final contract till maybe closing. But in United States, you become agreement on the paper with some contingency, then you move forward. The home inspection usually happens in first 10 days or so of the transaction. And a lot of places in the States, many different states in Washington, in the United States, the home inspector needs license as well. And they are hired by the buyer. Going back to appraiser, usually the appraiser cost right now is between about $700 to $800 US in the United States. And a home inspector is right around between $500 to $700. Depends on what type of inspection you request. And of course, have to do with the size of the home as well. If it's a very large home or multiple units like apartment, then yes, it's going to cost more. But if it's a single family home, it's usually about $500 to $700. And most of the place does require an inspector to have a home inspector to have a license. And there are some commercial inspector as well. But home inspector is more popular used in the residential market. And they do is they go through everything. Generally, they go through everything in the house. They do not go through the ground, but they do usually review the structure of the building. So they do, inside and outside of the structure. They go under the house. They go into attic space and so forth. And they're going to point out the things are deficient, it's bad, or maybe something that you need to keep eye on. So that's usually paid by the buyer. And with that report, buyer can request some repairs to made, but does not mean the seller have to agree to it. Seller and the buyer negotiate and agree on what items to be repaired, or there might be sometimes cash concessions. We're not going to fix this, but we'll give you so much cash for it. So what I want to do right now is, again, I want to share you the inspection report. Sorry, I wasn't able to give you the same one. but here's the inspection report. And this is a summary version. The summary version of the inspection report is given to an agent. And this is a report that usually the buyer and the agent go through, buyer agent go through this report and fill out forms whether they're going to request something or not. So let me shrink a little bit. That's easier to see. So this is what inspection report looks like. This is a summary version, only 30 pages. And they're going to point out what are some of the area that might be of concern. They see that there is a crack on the walkway. This was not a big deal. They're going to point out some of the outside siding. This area needs to be taken care of because there's a crack, or this is not even crack, but it needs to be sealed, so no water penetration. They say that on some other places. This one is showing decayed decks. They say decks are doing fine, but some of them that might not need a repair. And they'll go up on the roof and check the roof and see what potentially could be repaired as well. And they're saying that the tree is touching the roof. That's not good. And this is a vent. And this is we're missing area here that needs to be fixed. And of course, they go into the attic and check, make sure that all the insulation's in place and everything looks good. They're saying some parts of it were missing insulation. And they go underneath and they saw it here that some of the pipe is disconnected. And they go look at electrical panel and see if everything's okay. And they look at some of the outlet, and this is outside. Inside, they make sure that there is an alarm and CO monitor, carbon monoxide monitor, smoke alarm. So they looked at some of the furnaces, heaters, and they said everything looked okay. And they looked at the piping. This is where the water main is. That's all, but they're not telling you anything. This is where to shut off the water coming from the street. They look at the US water heater. So they look at everything, windows, make sure all the windows are not broken. And they also look at gas fireplace that they have. And outside, they're going to tell you that tree looks okay, the crack again. These are the concern items for concern that we show it to you. It's almost a repeat of everything. There you go. That's what inspection report looks like. With this report, like I said, with the buyer, as a buyer agent's going to go through the report with your buyer and determine what to ask to be repaired. But inspection is very common for buyers to do, but now, because in the seller's market where there's many people making offer, some people are not doing inspection to make your offer better. But it is very dangerous not to do a home inspection because you might be able to find something that's wrong with the house. You might not ask anything to do, but you could at least know what items needs to be fixed, or is there something wrong? Because not every day the seller goes up to the attic, meaning the up between roof and ceiling or even down below to check and see if there's something wrong with it. And like this one, we had a little bit of a water sewer line break. So seller will never know it, but we, because the inspector crawls underneath, that you'll be able to find it. And those are the items that we asked the seller to fix. Inspection is hired by the buyer, so the buyer should always attend the inspection. And we are just there to let the buyer, agent, inspector and buyers know. And I usually do is I just sit back and let the buyer and the buyer inspector goes through the house. And then we will review the items after that as well. And usually the inspection takes about 2 hours for a regular size of a house in United States. Any question on the inspection or appraisal? Of course, like you said, with the outcomes, can buyer cancel if not satisfactory? Yes, you could cancel it. Or my client lose if they request too many repairs, possible. Consider situation, multiple offers type of market, then you might do inspection and so forth. Usually about first 10 days after you go under contract is when you do inspection. Any question?
Yes. What are the, let's say, 5 biggest mistake that the client or the buyer can make if they buy the house without inspection in the US market?
Yeah, if we thought of this inspection, there could be large items that needed to be fixed, but you did not know, right? You didn't find it. If they find later, they could come back and, have a problem with the seller or even you as well. So this is inspection to protect the buyer and also to protect the seller and also to protect the agent. Because in the United States, if sometimes buyer finds something was really wrong with the house after they move in, and they could sue the seller. They could have a lawsuit. So that lawsuit will cost a whole lot more money than $500-700 to do. So, and also that way the buyer is very aware of what the condition of the house that's in when they buy it. Is inspection perfect? No, but it finds if it's a major things, most of the inspector find the same mistakes that they do. So I think to me, it's very, very important because in United States, it's a buyer's responsibility to make sure that this is the house that they want to buy. Seller has no obligation to give a perfect house. But sometimes seller does an inspection before they put house on the market, so they could fix the major things as well. But I do not recommend the seller to do a inspection in the beginning, but I do recommend some of the things needs to be done. Make sure there's no water leak, or make sure that like a water heater or furnace is working well, especially furnace for the heating system. I usually ask the seller to have it serviced and cleaned before we put it on the market. It's never a perfect, but we want to make sure it's in the best condition. Okay?
Yeah, and there's a case that the buyer can buy as it is also, right?
Yeah. If seller says as is, sometimes seller says it's sold as is, and I'm not going to fix anything, then buyer can, buy as is, but buyer could still do home inspection.
Okay.
Because they want to find out what's wrong with the house. They might not be able to back out, but you at least want to have an idea on what is wrong with the house. So they know that how much money they have to fix it after they buy it as well. But yes, there is as is as well.
I came across the term BPO, a broker price opinion. And how is it different from appraiser?
BPO is done by the real estate agent, broker price opinion. BPO is done by the real estate agent. It's not done by the appraiser. BPO is usually asked by the bank for real estate agents to give a price opinion. That's why it's called broker price opinion. That's what BPO is. Appraiser could be only done by a licensed appraiser. And that's normal people order appraisal? Not necessary, but some of my investor buyer, even though they're paying cash, they do, some of them will ask for appraisal. So,
Okay, thank you, Mark. I ran out of question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Everybody's okay? So let's continue on. I want to talk a little bit about insurance. Might be a little bit different in Cambodia than United States. In US, there's a 3 property insurance that you have, pre-insurance that you have to consider. Property insurance, flood insurance, title insurance. We'll talk a little about flood insurance because it's a little bit different. Property insurance should be applied for the same time as a mortgage, right? So most likely if you're borrowing money, the mortgage company or the bank will require to have a property insurance. And it is required to close if there's a mortgage, but it is not if you're paying cash. Of course, but I think you'll not be smart not to have an insurance. If the house itself has made many claims towards insurance before you buy it, they might consider that property as a problem property, and your premium, money that you pay towards insurance every month or every year, could be expensive as well. And also buyer's credit history can make a difference on insurance premium. And of course, within the property insurance, there's many types. Usually in the United States, your standard property insurance will cover a damage by fire or storm or flood. But a lot of it will not cover earthquake. Earthquake disaster here in our area is considered as the additional. So you have to pay additional money to get an earthquake coverage. Basically storms and natural disaster, most of them all is covered, except for earthquake in our area. You have to get a separate insurance to get earthquake insurance. So some parts of the country does require earthquake reinsurance for every home. You know, especially like in California, in United States, they require earthquake insurance of many of the areas because it's more common to have an earthquake in that area as well. Of course, if you go to East Coast in the United States or middle of the country, some insurance like a tornado insurance and different type of insurance is available, or sometimes it's a bit more. But property insurance is something that buyer have to get. And you want to make sure you look into property insurance before you close, because property insurance could be very expensive if especially it's in the considered as a problem property. Then you might not be able to pay for insurance as well. So you have to be very careful. Also, in United States, certain areas are considered as a flood area. In other words, area that could get a lot of water every year or have a chance to get a water in the low places. You have to, if your home is located in a flood zone, which is determined by the federal government, lender most likely will require you to get a flood insurance. And the largest flood insurance is provided by the National Flood Insurance Program, which is provided by the US government. But now we see some of the private insurance companies start giving flood insurance. So if you buy a house in a flood area, yeah, there might be extra money that you have to pay for flood insurance. Now, flood insurance can be very expensive. Depends on the flood area that you're in. You know, if it floods every year, to a certain extent, insurance might be higher. But that's something that you need to consider. The flood insurance is one items that you need to consider in United States. Okay. Another insurance in the United States, and this is probably not too familiar in many of the rest of the country. There's only a few countries that have a title insurance. What does title insurance do? Protects policyholder from losses resulting from defects in the title. Title meaning the ownership. And usually, title insurance is the only insurance that covers backwards. As you know, insurance usually, when you get an insurance, it usually covers forward, right? I mean, insurance is going to protect you from future events. But title insurance is the only insurance that covers the events that happened in the past that did not get on the title, such as some of the lien, the bank or somebody borrow money and they put a lien on the house, that might forgot to be put on. But the title transfer from the seller to the buyer. But the seller have to get a title insurance for the buyer in the United States. Then also the lender might require additional protection as well. So title insurance might be very unique to North America. There's some that's starting in Canada and United States, but title insurance is very popular, not popular, but almost a mandatory in United States. And title insurance cost is usually about, I'll say about 1% of the purchase price. And that only insurance is you pay only one time at closing, that's it. You don't pay monthly. Title insurance is one that you pay one time. Is usually, that's the case. And title insurance, I should say 1%, it's less than 1%. It's about 0.5 to 6% is your title insurance. So you're buying a $1 million house, your title insurance most likely about $5,000. If you're buying, $400,000 house, it'd be about, $2,000 and so forth. And additional, the lender might request will cost the buyer part of the loan cost be another $300-400. So let's talk about closing process. When you're getting close to closing, this is a final opportunity to reinforce value proposition to your client. Remember, in the beginning, we talked about the value proposition. What do we do as a buyer broker? What is the advantage of having your own broker? And why the closing process is important? Because usually that is the last impression that you're going to give. And you want to make sure you end with a positive note, because giving by buyer having a good impression at the end, that can create your future business. And that's why it's very important that you do it. You have to end well, right? Even though you did everything good, but at the end, you make a mistake, that's the mistake the buyer is going to remember. And you probably will not be able to work with them again because they have a bad feeling, or they're not going to tell their friends and family says, Mark was a good agent. You're not going to do that. So closing process is very, very important. And this is starting on page 151. Pre-closing walkthrough. Most of the contracts entitle buyers to inspect the home shortly before closing. Inspect meaning not with the inspector. It's called walkthrough. Before you sign paperwork, before you're closing, I think it's always a good job, good practice for the buyer to walk through the house again. But usually it happens in the United States about 3 to 5 days prior to closing. And if buyer's not able to do it, you need to do it. Buyers should do so personally. They should do it with or without you, but buyers should be able to walk through the house. Sometimes we let buyer and the seller meet because there are some things in the house the buyer wants to know how to use and so forth, some appliances or other things. But make sure the buyer wants to go look at it and say, is condition of the home the same as when they bought it? And has seller vacated, meaning did the seller move out and the house is clean? And you want to check, make sure all the repairs that agree that was going to be fixed is fixed. Of course, you usually will receive a receipt on all the repairs, but you want to walk through the house and make sure those items are repaired. Some of the buyer will get an inspector out again, pay a little bit extra, usually about $100 to go see the items that's repaired, especially when it's in the like attic or the crawl space in the under the floor and so forth, where not necessarily buyer or the agent wants to go look. Sometimes we ask the inspector to come out and check out those things. If you find a major problem, buyer can ask for delay closing or additional money in escrow to cover the repairs. So this is a very, very important, whether it's a commercial building or residential building or home. So in Cambodia, yes, I don't know whether you let the buyer do that, and because there's no buyer's agent. But if it's not, I think it's a good practice to have the buyer walk through the property before it closes. This is a very, very important part. So there's no surprise when the buyer takes the possession of the home. And there's no surprise and bad things that's there because you don't do well. Sometimes we find out after we closed, the seller left a lot of garbage and everything in the house. House is not cleaned up. I don't think that's the last impression you want to give because you should be able to catch that. You should be able to clean it up. If you do that 3-5 days before closing, that you as a buyer's agent or you call the listing agent and say, hey, you're supposed to have the house clean and it's not clean. Please take care of it, right? So that's very, very important. This pre-closing walkthrough is one of the most important things as part of the transaction. Prepare the buyer for closing. You prepare the buyers when, how it's going to close and so forth. In United States, it's very, very different. I want to share with you how it does in my state. Then if you could share with me how it's done, the closing is done a little bit later. Okay, in United States, you take more time with the first-time buyer and explain, of course, counsel client on who will attend, what to expect, and so forth. Closing process vary by state law and local custom and norms. So in state of Washington, we have a process called escrow. Escrow is a third party who prepares all the closing documents and all the legal documents that to get filed at the registry office. and they prepare the documents based on purchase and sales agreement or contract that we created. You know, purchase price, who's taking title and everything else. In state of Washington, buyer makes appointment with the escrow and seller make appointment with escrow, and it's separate. Usually buyer and the seller never meet at the closing. They sign the paperwork about 1 to 2 days prior to closing date. And we do not exchange keys and money at that time. They both sign that the document goes back for review, especially to the bank, and banks okays it. Then bank says, please file. So when then title company escrow will go and file the registry to the registry of change of the ownership. When the change of ownership is done, that's when we exchange the key, and usually the buyer seller will get their money wired in same day or day after. So you do not exchange keys when they go in to sign. In the United States, there are some places where the buyer and the seller sits in the same room with the escrow, sign papers and exchange key at that time. Or some places there's no escrow. Sometimes it's done by the attorneys. Lawyer take care of that closing. So it's all different in the United States and many places. But most common ones are what I just said. And a buyer seller never meets. They make a separate appointment with the escrow and they go in and sign papers. Closing, gather all forms and documents. As a buyer, you need your identification, photo ID. Sales contract is usually have that. Usually proof of home ownership insurance and other insurance certificate. Usually the lender requires that. Proof of title search and title insurance, home appraisal, home inspection reports, all funds for down payment, closing costs, and any of other fees. These are all needs to be everything that have to be ready by the buyer and the seller. And it's our job as an agent to help them that. And closing, who attends? It's varied by the state, but I do attend closing, especially when I'm on the buyer side, and especially with a first-time home buyer. But agent does not have to attend, but it is always a good idea to attend, especially with a first-time home buyer, because I could be their assistance if they need it. But I have no part in the closing signing. Usually, I just sit there and listen and let the escrow officer do the job. Usually, the buyer refers to as a mortgager. Then there's a seller, real estate agent for buyer and the seller. Closing agent, usually an employee of the title company or escrow company. The lenders, sometimes they attend. Attorneys, could be an attorney that might be involved. And so for these people could attend. And right now, during COVID, things changed quite a lot. Nowadays, we don't even go to title company or escrow company to sign anymore. We usually have a remote signer that come to your house and sign paperwork for the buyer and the seller, because we don't want people gathering in big rooms. Or right now, I know that notary, the signature need to be notarized in the United States as well. But right now, we can do a notary via Zoom. So sometimes that documents are sent to the seller or the buyer, and you get on the Zoom just like this with a notary. So notary have to make sure to check your ID, and they have to see that you're signing paper. So they do that on the Zoom. They can do that now because COVID allows us not to be together. But United States has approved a way to use a remote notary like through Zoom. I think there's, out of 50 states, I think there's only about 3 or 4 states that's not allow these online notary. California and New York, I think, being the large state that who doesn't allow us still. But in Washington state, yes, we can. So you make it very easy. And sometimes I attend via Zoom like this, or most of the time I don't attend Zoom, but I'm available if they have a question. At closing, what do? Closing means that when you sign in paper, you sign legal agreements, pay down payment and closing costs. And you don't really receive the key at closing. Signing. In Washington, signing date and closing date is different. And of course, we inspect a copy of closing documents. So let me ask a question. So it might be always, if you don't have one, to create a checklist for closing so the buyer could do a checklist and make sure everything they have is ready. So question to you right now is a question that I asked a little bit before. In Cambodia, how does closing happen? Everybody goes to the same place, sit in the same room and sign documents. How does it work in Cambodia? Anybody could share with me? How does closing work in Cambodia? In Washington, you do separately. Seller and buyer does never meet. They do it separate, even separate time and do it. But how about Cambodia? Does every buyer and seller meet in the same room? Front of maybe notary? How does that work in Cambodia? Anybody willing to share? No? Okay.
Usually we do it both of them in the present. Yeah, there are also times if unless one of the parties is busy, cannot make it, you can probably do that. But generally, you know, both sides are present and they sign, and then in most cases, I would say I may be wrong because I'm not an agent, but that's what I see. Most cases, you know, they sign the agreement and then they just do the escrow, just like immediately.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of countries are still like that. They meet in a room, you know, they sign the final documents. Then you do like a judicial scrivener or a notary. They sign, then they go file. Then they come back and tell you congratulations, and you know, you shake hands and you give the keys or whatever. You know, that's usually still happens on many places in the rest of the world. Is the buyer and the seller meet in the same room, and sometimes it take not 2, 3, 4 hours. By United States, it's different.
Even longer.
Yeah, even longer, right? Half a day or maybe even a whole day.
Negotiating the clauses.
Yeah, you might be still negotiating at the end, right? But in United States, all the negotiations done. When you get to closing, usually signing the documents on the buyer side, it takes a little bit longer if they're getting the loan. But maybe it's about 35 minutes to maybe 30, no more than 1 hour. Seller side is usually only about half an hour because seller doesn't have too many documents to sign because they're not borrowing money. Because the loan document, you borrow money in these documents, there's a lot of documents. But if you don't borrow money, there's not too many documents to sign. So in US, the signing usually about an hour for each side. Then they just go home and they wait and it gets recorded next day or 1 or 2 days later. We get notified. It says agent gets notified, says, hey, Mark, your transaction recorded. Then usually the key, if I'm on the buyer side, I usually have the key already. The seller, a listing agent, seller's agent has given me a key already. So I have the key, and that's the time then I could give the key. When it's recorded, I could give that key to my client buyer. Sometimes I meet them at the house. Sometimes just depends how it works and who busy we all are. They could come and pick up the key at the office, or things like that we do as well. So let's talk about data privacy a little bit. Make sure that your office have a data privacy, meaning that there's many things that nowadays gets on the computer, right? Or stored in the computer or cloud, where it might be. We want to make sure all the privacy information that's including purchase and sales agreement, everything else is kept to the safe location. We in my state, we have to keep the documents for 7 years in the real estate. So right now we use a lot of cloud, online saving. So we put all the emails, all the purchase sales agreement, any documents that's related to the sales get stored. Or if some documents need to be disposed, make sure you dispose of property, shred the paper, don't just throw it in the trash. And most of the office has an office policy, how it's done. Another things that begin to happen is quite a lot is wire fraud. Why wire fraud is important? Because let's say the seller or buyer is wiring money to escrow for a payment to buy, and all of a sudden you get an email somewhere says the account has changed, please deposit to this account. And buyer says, oh no, then buyer changed and buyer deposit to the account. And those are fraud. Even in our office, we had a case. And right now, usually the title company or escrow company or whoever's doing the closing agent will not email you where to deposit. It's usually done in a secure way, or they use secure websites and so forth to communicate now. So those information is not out there in the open. Yeah, there was a case where buyer actually was wiring $200,000 as part of the payment for the house. Middle of the night, he received the email from title company. That should have been a red flag, because middle of the night, title company is not going to email you saying that change. They say, we changed the account, so please deposit into this account, not to the account that you have. So buyer says, oh no, they changed the account, sent the money in, $200,000, gone. He deposits the account. Of course, we cannot track it. And he lost $200,000. So we have to be very, very careful about wire fraud. Whenever you're wiring money, do not change. They do not ask you to change the bank account at the last minute. So those are things. Wire fraud becomes very important, right? So people are starting to say, instead of doing that, we use cryptocurrencies. But that's dangerous as well right now. Cryptocurrency does not have any standard policy on it. But I think the real estate transaction with the cryptocurrencies or blockchain technology is coming into play, and for more security and more widely used. So that might become one of the norms, especially when you're doing a global transaction, because you don't have to worry about exchange rate. But I think it still take a while for all the cryptocurrency to become normal and becomes part of our real estate life. But you, as a real estate agent, want to continue to study and learn more about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. That will come into it. It becomes somewhat normal in our business. I think we will. So here are the key points review for Module 5. Contract contingency must be resolved in a timely manner to prevent the contract from becoming voided. counsel buyers to refrain from making changes to their financial pictures until after closing. The result of the home appraisal and home inspection can delay the closing process. Realtors should establish procedure for data privacy and security. All right, so let's take our break before we go to module 6. And on this one, I'm going to give you a little bit over 10 minutes break, because remember the homework that I gave you, just to think about your strength, weakness, what's threat to your business, and what is opportunity that you have. So please think about that. And I'll give you extra 5 minutes to think about it. Then we'll come back. I'll give you 10 minutes, then I'll give you another 5 minutes. So we're going to be coming back right around 10:15 or so. All right. So let's take our break. Thank you, everyone. I mean, so in a sense, it is very advantage, might be, one of the things that you're going to do is, a lot of the places it's attractive for some of the buyers, those are the think about it. If you're looking at international market, you want to study those market and see what they are. And nowadays, it's fairly easy to study different countries, through internet, but also through the network that you might have with the CIPS or other that you might be able, other CIPS or ABR network that you might have in the US and rest of the world, you'll be able to find out. That's one of the reasons why your association and NAR is in cooperating association. So and we have many countries in Asia that we're partnered with. So you should be able to get many information that might be help your business. But important part is there's a blank one, right? Blank page on the 167. I think it's very, very important for you to work on this so you can find out what your strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And I create a business plan every year. And my business plans is pretty simple usually. So, my business plans is like one page. One thing that I figure out is how much money I want to make this year. In order for me to make that money, how much do I need to work? How much house I need to sell? Then my marketing plan becomes different as well. So that's always what I try to do every year is that. How much money do I really want to make? My goal always usually is do about 10 million US dollars. And right now, our average minimum 10 million US dollars. Our average price of a home in my area is about $500,000. So I want to do about, minimum 20 transactions a year. But I usually end up doing more than 20 transactions. I usually end up being about 30 transactions every year minimum. But that's my goal is set a little bit lower, but usually that's my goal is usually want to do minimum $10 million in sales. The commission is usually 2.5% of that, so about $250,000 minus expense. So my goal always usually is to make about $200,000 a year on the sales. But what else I do? And outside of that, I teach classes like this, and I do make money teaching classes in some of the areas as well. So, my goal is that. So I set the goal. But knowing the goal, in order for me to set the goal, I go through this SWOT analysis every year before I make my business plan. So my business plans from January to December. So my business plan is completed by end of October. Because in USA, holiday season starts in mid-November and all through December. So that's not a good time. You want to finish that. So by the time it's January 1st, you are ready to go with your new plan. Okay. And so far, I'm coming end of the first quarter. And if you divide it by, if I want to do 30 transactions, I have to do about, roughly, I don't know, 8 transactions in the first quarter. Right now, I'm at the end of the quarter. I have a close 7 in the first quarter. So I'm pretty much okay. I'm almost there. So that's my goal. Okay. But you want to have a business plan because you're running a business. By knowing your strengths and weaknesses and knowledge of a competition equals your value proposition. Represent your market distinction. Revisit and reassess periodically. Make sure you're muted. Some of you are not muted. The host, can you mute a couple of the people? Okay, I'll pause for a minute to everybody's okay.
Oh man. Host chui bật mút host rồi có admin này mute các bạn ta hay chỉ có đọc snap này
mình sẽ theo nhóm
mong để thằng hosting quạt lại cho bật mute ở quạt tiếng
ba mình sẽ ơi ở đây con hơi mũ để nhóm nhóm đắng hay
whoever the host, you could mute everybody. Mute everybody. Go to the chat. Go to the participant and mute everybody. Then I'll mute myself.
trong mắt đắng ấy đưa vào con trong
Chel Chandra, you're not muted. Please mute yourself.
Bây giờ
không khang nè đây mà cha zoom nó chút bật một phút con
Host, please mute everybody. Please, host, you can mute by going to the participant, and you can mute everybody. Okay, I think I can mute people as well, so I will go and mute. Okay, I think everybody's muted.
Yes, you can.
Okay. All right, we'll continue. Hopefully almost everybody's muted. All right, so I encourage you to do this SWOT analysis and make sure you have a business plan. I think that's very, very important. Every single person, you're in business. Unless you get in salary from your company, then you're in business. So you have to have a business plan for your own as well. Right? One more time, we'll go back to that. And know your competition, right? Revisit and reassess periodically. Use to gain advantage in local market. Knowing your strengths, weaknesses, knowledge of competition is your value. So when it comes to that, how do you create your unique value? you want to differentiate yourself from everybody. So what is special about you comparing to other people? Differentiate yourself could be different. It could be different type of services, not just the fee structures. Remember, fee structures, once you start bringing your fee structure lower and giving discounts, it is not going to come back up. It's not going to. Especially in the real estate business where the trust and referrals are very important, you're not going to be able to bring the commission back up. Because if you give a discount to one person and that person refer you a client, they're going to expect the same thing or lower. The important part of a unique value proposition is this. Number one, differentiate yourself. So find out what is different about you than other competition. I said it again and again. That's very important. It doesn't have to be anything big. And serve your clients and customers. If you think about money first, your customer sees that in your eye and your actions. That's one of the reasons why worldwide, the real estate agent does not have a good reputation, is because people get into business. I want to make money. I want to make money. I want to make lots of money. Yes, we want to make money, but money will come to you if you serve your clients and customers. Money should not be the most important part for you being a real estate agent. If that's the case, it's going to be very hard to continue to grow without being honest. That's one reason why worldwide real estate agent does not have a good reputation, because they think we just want to make money, 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 money. Think about it. Be authentic. What's be authentic mean? Be authentic mean is that you want to be sure you're yourself. Don't try to be somebody who you are not, because that's going to be very hard and becomes awkward, and your client sees that. Just be yourself. Yes, you might not attract all the people by being yourself, but people who likes you is going to come to you and they're going to work with you. I think it's very, very important, because if you try to be fake or try to be somebody who you are not, and it becomes very hard and you're going to make a mistake, then what you're going to do? So what is your unique value proposition? That's on page 169, has a place that you could figure out what is unique about you. Why are you different? What can you do that's different than anybody else? And you don't have to share that with us, because it needs to be unique. Okay? But think about that. He talks about troubleshooting script for the field. Real estate is complex and dynamic. Difficult situations are part of business. Be prepared and know constructive way to respond. So here, kind of gives you a lot of scenario here, right? It's starting on page 70. What would you do if the buyer doesn't want initial counseling session? I can find the property on the internet. I really don't need a whole counseling session. I just need you to get me into the house. Remember, our job is not just to show the houses. There's a lot of other things that go through with a real estate transaction. That's where I'm here to help you. Scenario number 2, this is a value proposition, right? If every agent has access to MLS, so you have all the same information, why is that advantage of working with you? What is your answer is going to be? How would you answer that? I know what I want already. I just need you to get me showings. I know what I want. So just get me so that I could go see the house that I want to go see. How would you answer that question? This one I'm not going to go through detail because you don't have a buyer agency agreement that's in place. But like I said, I use buyer agency agreement every single time. And I share with you the sample buyer agency agreement other day. How about when buyer asks about offers, commissions, and fees? I want to find a really good deal. What can you do for me? Right? Everybody wants a good deal. They say, what can you do for me? The market is kind of confusing right now. How will you help me decide how much to offer? Is your commission negotiable? Can I get a discount? What is your answer going to be? It's easy to give a discount. But remember, once you give a discount, you never it's coming back up again. So your job should be to prove to them that you're worth what you're getting paid for. Think about it. If you have a chance to go to the good doctor when you're sick, aren't you willing to pay more money to go to see the doctor or have a surgery with that doctor? Or do you always go to the cheapest doctor? So if you want to be treated like a professional, like a doctor, we need to act like a professional. And we need to bring that value that's worth what your commission is. Do I have to pay a fee if I don't buy a home? It's up to you how you have it. If your commission is based on the sales price, how can I ensure will try to get me the best deal? Are you going to try to sell me more expensive house? Think about that. When dealing with a FSBOs, remember, for sale by owner, no listing agent. If seller can go FSBO, why can't I make a purchase on my own? Sure you can. They could do on their own. But it's going to be very, very difficult without agents involved. How are you going to answer that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a relevant question from one of us in the chat box. I think there's a question in the chat box. I think that's relevant to what we are discussing.
Okay. So
I would like to ask you about MLM. Can owners sell their own properties in MLS? And the second one, is there any case happening where, buyers buy directly from the seller after we show them the property?
Okay, so first of all, MLS is only with real estate agents. Seller cannot use the MLS to sell their own property. No. That's one thing. MLS for the real estate agents. And people who has access to MLS have to have a license. In the state of California, Washington, you have to have a license to sell real estate. Can they go seller and a buyer meet on their own and do paperwork? They can do it. Sure. But remember, it's not real estate transactions, as you know, it's not just about finding the buyer and advertising the house. There's a lot of things that goes after that, right? Understanding the market, how to deal with the paperwork, how the closing works. All that is important. So, I mean, in the chat room question, yeah. No, you cannot put anything on the MLS unless you're the real estate agent. So say, and is there any case happen about buyer comes with an agent to visit the properties and they buy properties directly from the owners without an agent? If it's listed on MLS, it needs to have to go through the MLS. That's the rule. That's a law. That's the rules. If you don't follow the rules, you will not have access to MLS anymore. Then you might not be able to practice real estate in United States because MLS is the one that has the most data and most available houses. And 90% of the agents are member of MLS. There might be some that has a license that's not part of the MLS because they might be attorney that have a real estate license and they don't practice every day. But MLS is a standard in the United States to be used, and which they don't have in a lot of the countries, including Cambodia. So that cross sell doesn't happen, meaning selling somebody else's listings. One way to look at MLS is, yeah, MLS is bad because I have to share my information with everybody, right? That's not good. I want it all for myself or with my company. That's one way to look at it, yes. But other way to look at it is, you know what? I have an opportunity to grow my business outside of our company. You are now, yes, you're sharing information, but other people are sharing information as well. So you have a chance to make money by selling other people's listings, sellers. So that's how you look at it. Depends on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, I think the second question is more about, buyers buy directly from the seller or owner of the property. Say the agent, we show them the property, but then they cut us and
yeah, you can't do that. You cannot do that in the United States. That's against the MLS rules. If you do that, then you're going to be fined. And you're going to be, if it's malicious, then you're not going to be able to use MLS anymore. They're going to kick you out.
About the case of FSBO, for sales by owner.
For sale by owner? For sale by owner is different because the listing site doesn't have an agent. For sale by owner only happens when the seller does not have an agent. When you sign an agreement with the seller to sell, it stipulates that during our agreement that I am going to get commission and I'm going to help you. You cannot sell on your own. Yes, you can make a special deal, says if you sell on your own, I get less money or whatever. But if the seller says, I'm going to sell my own, but they might say, there are companies that say, you know what, sellers only contract we'll have is that I will list the house on the MLS for you, but other things you have to do on your own. There's service like that as well. But that's the MLS rule. If the agents are involved, which is listed on the MLS, then yes, you have to use an agent and they have an obligation to pay, seller has an obligation to pay the commission that whatever they agreed on. Okay, so that's the case. So MLS rules are very strict. All right. Hopefully I answered the question that was in the chat. I think.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
The procedure is very good at preventing, unethical behavior.
Yeah.
by the
That
conduct
is thing,
involved. The
one
case,
thing that's
I
true
think,
is
happens quite often in Cambodia.
I think there's two things that you have to worry about. Number one, no matter which country it is, some country does not have a real estate law or licensing law, and some company do. And there's a law that we have to abide by. But when it comes to ethics, a lot of the ethics are very, very world standard, right? Not just a real estate ethic. But think about your own ethics and moral values. I don't think there's any ethics in any country said it's okay to cheat other people. Right? Bottom line, I think that's ethics for anything, a business ethics, right? I know that there are people who don't abide by that, but just think about it. Do you want to be that person? If you abide by your own ethics and business ethics, you will not get into trouble. Now, I shouldn't say you will not, you could get into trouble anytime, but you don't have to worry about getting in trouble if you're doing the right things. It's not necessarily just the law. That's one of the goals that National Association Realtor, NAR, has, is that we want to make sure the transaction is transparent and ethical throughout the world, so we make a very easier place to do real estate transaction. Ethics part doesn't change regardless of which country you're in, right? Your law might change, different, but standard of the ethics does not change wherever you might be. And even in the United States, our Realtor Code of Ethics is a higher standard than any of the licensing law that's in our country or any state in the United States. So look at scenario number 2. A client of yours is interested in looking out for sale by owner and ask you to check out any local listings. How do you approach sellers in various situations? Depends. When I'm approaching for sale by owner, first of all, I'm working for my buyer. So I'm going to try to do my best to negotiate on behalf of my buyer, sometime asking the seller to pay fees if necessary. Right? So I do my best dealing with the for sale by owner. But my buyer understands that if we're working with a FSBO, which is for sale by owner, if the seller is not willing to pay, buyers, you need to pay me to do this transaction. And a lot of my buyers will pay if they're looking for the house. So those are things. What do you do in that situation? All right, let's page 177. These are pro tips for success. Remember, we did the property comparison worksheet that was before. Use that sheet when you're comparing properties for your buyer and tailor the worksheet for your local market. Use home buyers checklists. Remember, those are listed in chapter 1 and 2. Some of them. Home buyer checklist was, remember, listed on page 175 of the new booklet. and give more tools to the buyers. Buyer representative safety. Because in the United States, sometimes we deal with the clients that we don't have a relationship with. 1/3 of the realtors in the United States reporting being a situation that made them feel unsafe. It's important to have a very proactive plan for safety. Doesn't matter how much money you make. If you die or you get killed, it's not good. So one of the things that very safety tip that could be done, everything is that first time meet with your client. Remember we talked about doing buyer orientation or buyer workshop in the beginning? Do that in your office so that people in the office sees those people. What I try to do is right now is a little bit different because most of my clients are referrals, so I'm okay. But if I'm meeting the new clients, I'm going to meet them at the office. And I'm going to introduce them to my receptionist, person who's at the front desk, or somebody, manager or somebody. Why? So that they at least seeing those people as well before you go out. Right? Sorry about that. So that's very, very important. And some of the company, they take a photocopy of the ID. Like in the United States, some company will ask for their driver's license, copy of their driver's license. So we know who they are. In USA, about 4 to 5 real estate agent is killed, murdered every year. It usually happens during the showing at the vacant house. And it says right here, right? 1/3 of the realtors reported being a situation that made them feel unsafe. So what are some of the risky situations? Meeting a prospect for the first time, showing property alone, open houses, you don't know who comes in. And you don't want to do flashy personal marketing. That's including, you don't want to wear a lot of jewelries, gold chains, and diamonds and so forth, so that way that doesn't become a obstruction. And some people say just even driving your clients around could be dangerous as well. People say, well, let's meet at the house. Meeting at the house become very normal nowadays because with the COVID. Entering a vacant or foreclosed properties, those could be a safety concern as well. So what can you do to increase safety? Follow your instincts. It doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Have a safety plan in place for all situations. Use safety apps and products. There might be safety apps. We have a safety real estate app in the United States. Check resources available through your brokerage. NAR does here talk about the safety planning, your safety strategy, but this is mainly towards the United States, but there might be something that you might be able to attract. That website is listed on the page 181 on the top part. So you could go there as well. Because I show you the NAR side, right? Then put it in the safety tip and you'll be able to find it. Most of the items are available openly. And some items are, you have to be a member of NAR to be able to get it. Getting towards technology help you work efficiently and effectively. Technology has altered the real estate landscape. It made it some way more challenging, but easier in many other ways. But one thing that you have to remember, Technology is a tool, and right now, real estate is still a person-to-person business. It's very rare case the buyer buys the house or even business space without looking at it. By using the technology, you can now work faster and more efficient. One bad thing is because with a smartphone, you are available almost any time. And sometimes that gives you too much work, right? In the United States, most used tools are MLS applications. We have a lockbox that's for the house and social media as well. Technology helps manage time. CRM, customer relation management tools. That could help you target the best leads. Could send bulk email messages. Maybe you could send newsletters and things like that. Manage social media, implement drip campaigns, manage client accounts, reminder of clients, closing anniversaries, birthdays, etc. Manage and monitor your financials. Look at your CRM, customer relation management tools that your company offers or you have or might be available there in Cambodia. I know that if you work for many of them. What was that? What do I personally use?
Yeah.
My company franchise, my Windermere has our own CRM system, which is called MoxieWorks. And he manages, if I have my email and address, like he will send out market data each month according to their post office number, each month automatically. All I have to have is their home address and email, and it will send it automatically for me. And I send it right now to about 500 people, to all my past clients. So my past client knows everything is happening around their house. Or there's a way to send out, email. I mean, I utilize many social media as well to not for real estate, but actually keeping in touch with my client. But you could do a lot of things on the customer CRMs. And unfortunately, I don't know what's available in for customer relation management tools in Cambodia. So maybe if you are working with a franchise, talk to your franchise, or Google and see, and the vendor and see what kind of CRM system that are available for you to use. Worst case scenario is you could use Microsoft Excel to create a spreadsheet, and you could use that to email them, blast, and so forth as well. So maybe learning how to use Microsoft Excel, or a lot of if you're using Microsoft, you have a lot of the email groups and so forth that you could create using Outlook and everything else as well. Social media strengthens your business. 75% of NAR members use social media for business. Provides strongest lead. Most used, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Those are 3 most used. Buyer ages 30 and under grew up with social media. And they now account for 82% of the first-time home buyer in the United States. All buyers expect you to connect with your online. Remember in the beginning, we talked about most of the buyer goes online first. So you have to have some kind of online presence. I have a website that I use, and a lot of people do not search me off of the website as well, but I'm their website if they want to go to. I use Facebook, and some of you might be friends already from last time we taught. If you want to be friends, just put Mark Kitabayashi, and you'll be able to, I'll make sure that I'll friend you as well. But on the Facebook, I don't do a lot of real estate marketing on the Facebook. You can, but I choose not to. I just use a Facebook just to remind them that I'm still available. I'm still alive and I'm still well. And once in a while, I post something that's to do with the real estate. And I try to post something that's real estate that everybody's interested in the entire world or entire United States, not just by my market. And most of the time you see it on my Facebook post is a lot of things to do is I post food. My wife and I love to cook. We both love to cook. And with the COVID and everything else, we have not gone out and eat outside for almost over 2 years now. But most of them, almost all the meals, I should say, all the meals that's been posted in the last 2 years is all done by us at home. So if you want to see what I'm eating every night, you could Facebook me, friends, and you could see what I'm eating. But a lot of my clients go to that just to see what I'm eating, or they make comments, or friends. I don't talk anything about real estate, but they remember that I'm still around. And once in a while, I talk about real estate. Like today, I posted our Windermere company have our economist, our chief economist, Matthew Gardner. He's a U.S. known economist, and he puts a video on about once a month. And he talked about the emergence of Bitcoins and blockchains. We talked about it today a little bit. He made a video on it. So if you go to my Facebook page and so you see it, I posted the video. It's about 8 minutes video. You could see what he have to say about it. Things like that. Brand consistency across platform. You have to send a consistent message throughout the platform, whatever the platform you use. LinkedIn, I am a member and I use it, but I don't use it as often as probably I should. But I do have an account in Facebook, LinkedIn, of course, Instagram, definitely because Instagram now is connected to Facebook. So I post to right now, if I post something to Instagram, it will go to my Facebook, and also it goes to my Twitter account. Or there might be some other system that you've posted one place that goes to all other multiple places, check and see. You might have to pay money for that, but that's available as well. So use social media somehow. Not necessarily just to advertise your real estate business, but you have to, if you continue to post just a real estate business, people are not going to follow you. You have to capture people's mind. Other things that you have to remember is after closing, due diligence moving forward. After closing is truly when your marketing starts. For that client to come back and buy more homes from you, or if you're an investor, and also for them to become a good referral base and they go refer their friends and clients. That's how you are. That's the easiest way to gain new clients. Let your past client be the marketing person for you. This is where the referrals are won and lost. Help buyers compile a file of documents received at closing. Prepare a mailing date, January of the following year, containing anything buyer might need for taxes. Just depends every year. Show appreciation with a personalized gift for the client of their new home. Give the gift and keep in touch with your client. I'm going to share with you what I do for my client. My client, that's including my partners, including mortgage broker, lender, everything. I deliver a box of chocolate to my clients every year. And I personally deliver the box of chocolate every year. I don't mail it. I don't have a messenger take it. I personally deliver. So holiday time is very busy for me. Last holiday that we just passed, I did 350 boxes of chocolate. How I see whether my business is growing or not is counting the box of chocolate. If my box of chocolate that I have to deliver goes down, that means I'm not doing well in my business. Luckily, my box of chocolate continue to increase. Some of my clients, once they're my client, if they don't move away in the area that I cannot deliver, then they get their holiday news card and a newsletter. But I drive almost to, maybe You know, from my place, the farthest place I deliver my chocolate is about 200 kilometers. I deliver chocolate. Only box of chocolate I deliver every year. Some of my clients are getting I started in 2002, delivering box of chocolate. So some of my clients are be getting for 19 years, box of chocolate. Doesn't matter where they bought or sold from there. I deliver a box of chocolate every year on my own. And that becomes a good connecting point with my clients and so forth. So do something different. Right? After you finish, you want to have a client feedback form that could be filled out. Remember, buyer becomes the seller sometime, and seller becomes a buyer again. Real estate is all in circles. I know that there's no buyer agency in Cambodia yet, but think about how you could utilize what you learn as a listing agent or just as a service to your buyer. That will bring you a lot more profit, but you have to work from what you learned from this class and customize it to your own. Feedback is the best thing. When you finish the transaction, you want to send the customer feedback. That way, your client knows how that's done. So, key point of review for Module 6. Assessing yourself and your competition is essential to success. Building a unique value proposition pay off for your business. Preparation helps yours to respond effectively to common client concern. Client relationships are valuable resources. So let's take our final break. Let's take a 10-minute break and we will come back and we will finish it up. Okay, let's take our 10-minute break. And if you have any questions, think about it so you could ask me after the break. We'll come back about 11:25. Thank you, everyone. All right, let's get started. So what I want to do right now is share with you some of the items on the ABR. And I just basically log on to ABR website. These are the member home pages. And there are a lot of ABR benefits that you could hear this. And you could get a lot of advisor, marketing yourself and so forth. You have a lot of them that you could get. And you as a individual, you will get a ABR newsletter, digital version every month as well. But these are the things you could click, and these are all available only for ABR member, how they could use some of the templates that you could use. And you could personalize your ABR, some of the ABR news and things like that. That's all under ABR Member Center. Let's see, you could go to the, manage your membership. You could do the tap the ABR network. You go to the ABR network. Then you could go to, you have your own ABR Facebook page that you become a member of, and you become a member of ABR directly as well. And they'll be able to find out the ABRs. Another thing that's on here is resource with home buyers, ABR PowerPoint, ABR script, buyer's agreement. You could do ABR's buyer seminar, home buyers toolkit. So let's see what we do. You want to click the home buyers toolkit. and you'll be able to use these toolkit that you have. You could click it, you could download it. Consumer one sheet. These are some of the one sheet that we talked about in a lot of the class. So you want to buy a home, negotiating process and things like that. You get access to all this as a member of ABR, okay? And what's the next step? So finally, next step is you took your ABR 2-day class already. You satisfied that one. You membership in good standing in a cooperating association. You have to be a member of your association right now. You have to do one-time application fee of US $185. But after that, and there's a payment portal, and talk to your association to see how they're going to handle that as well. And for your cost of maintaining your ABR membership is maintaining your NAR International Realtor Membership, IRM. After the first year, you only have to do is pay $75 a year to maintain your ABR designation and any other NAR designation. So if you already have a CIPS designation, you can maintain CIPS and ABR, only have to pay $75 each. If you are a US member, there's a fee for every single designation. I think ABR is about $120 every year, and CIPS is about, I think, $150 every year for me. So I pay. So as you see, I have about 12 different designation. So I do pay about, I don't know, closer to about $1,500 every year to maintain my designation. So it's a very good deal for the foreign person. So this is at the end. Any questions or comment? Everybody's good? So hopefully, anybody has comments or questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, just I mean, the 2 days, it's been a lot of technical stuff. If you can share a bit about, like, for example, personal branding or marketing, if you're an ABR agent.
Yeah, branding and marketing is going to be very hard, because branding is you basically have to create your own brand. And since I'm not in Cambodia, it's going to be hard. But branding meaning that you have to have some type of brand that is going to, big differences we talk about is you need to differentiate yourself than the others, because there's many of you that are doing the same thing. So you need to stand out. Branding mean not necessarily mean you're going to specialize in something. Branding might be creating your own logo that stands out. That might be one of them. And I could share with you, let me see. If you could 1 minute.
Or maybe, Mark, as an ABR agent, buyer agent, for example, say we want to get started in Cambodia. So what would be your advice for us, when we approach our clients?
I think there's a client. The one approach is, real estate is the biggest transaction, biggest purchase that you're going to do. And your question, don't you want somebody representing you, not the seller? That would be my pitch. So whatever the money you go willing to charge to be a buyer agent? Maybe you'd be a buyer consultant. People hire consultant for many things. Why not as a buyer? That who's going to just look out after your interest? You're not working for both parties. You can't, it's hard to work for both parties. I don't think you could give a good service if you're working for both sides. That's my personal belief. How can you? So that would be my approach in Cambodia. If I was in Cambodia right now, I will start a lot of buyer agents agreement. You might not start with high. And, you know, I want to create a culture that, yeah, if I'm going to buy a house, I want to go to Mark because he's going to help me find the right house. Think about it. I'm just throwing numbers, okay? You pay buyer agent I don't know, whatever, $500. And if you're able to save $1,000 cheaper to buy the house, is that worth it?
Definitely, yes.
Definitely yes, right?
Yes.
So that's the way that I will approach it. I am representing only you. I don't work for anybody else but you, buyer. And people are always willing to pay consultant. Why do they pay consultant? Because they bring value. So you have to pitch the value of buyer agency. That's what I would do if I were you in Cambodia. I still have to do in the United States. More so not about getting paid, but more so, you know, creating my client base. You know, maybe you might do something to offer. I mean, this is not always a good thing. Since if you would hire me as a buyer's agent, that I will give you some discount when you decide to sell. If they never sell, they don't get discount. But if they decide to sell, they're going to get a discount, special client discount. How about that? You bought the house or the property for less money, hopefully, that paid your fee. And plus future, you're going to get discount when you're going to sell. That's what I would do. So like a branding, somebody is talking about branding. So this is my logo. I use this logo on my flyers. I use logo on my websites and things like that. That's my brand. One of the branding that I use. And as far as the branding is concerned, if you belong to franchise company and so forth, use their branding and use their marketing sources. That's how you want to get started and create. You have to create your own branding. That's different than anybody else. Any other question? Everything that was on the slide is in your booklet. So keep your booklet as a Bible. And the recording was done by your association. So ask them if they're able to give you a copy of recording or not. Okay. Remember, just taking the ABR class for last 4 days, it's not give you a right to use ABR. You are able to use the information that you use, but you have to get in order to market yourself as an ABR, you have to become ABR designee. Unfortunately, you have to pay a little bit more money to do that as well. So please remember, even though you might not move forward to get ABR designation could be the branding that you could start for some of you that's been on. There's only about 100 people on the call today. Even everybody becomes ABR. You're the first 100 ABR person in Cambodia. And that could be your branding and that could be your marketing tool to start. And you at least have a US way of doing things. You can always customize into Cambodians, you know, change the language or just change the situation as well. And you saw that there's plenty of resources. Any other question?
Yes, Mark.
Sure.
Besides ABR, CRS, CIPS, I saw the destination that you've been through. Can you recommend us some other destination courses that fit into our market? If you happen to
What
know.
I think it fits into market right now is ABR is probably the most one that fits. And right now, other one, CRS is a good one, but it gets into more technical, more detail. And the CRS is not, you're not going to be able to get designation by just taking a class. You have to meet a certain volume as well. And CRS is done by our sister association, RRC. So it's more expensive. And to get the designation to take the class, so if you got CIPS, ABR, I think the ABR is the most effective one for any country because there's always buyer there. So like you see on my show, you see SRES, that is the senior real estate service. By senior is not a big. Sorry, I'm going to do something right now. So senior real estate associate is not necessarily the most important one, and SFR might not be as well. But there's a lot of things that's there that you might be able to use. But I mean, certainly the green designation is going to become more popular as we get, all that world is looking at, everything is going green and so forth. Yeah, it might help you that, but not necessarily that's going to be good in your country as well, because a lot of developing countries still have energy things. But green is getting very popular. ePro, which is a designation for digital marketing and so forth, it helps, but it's very US centric. That a lot of website and things that they tell you might not be available in your country. And other thing, if you are looking at making a client that's want to invest in a US property, RSPS, Resort and Second Home Property Specialist, might be a good one. They talk more about how the investment property in the United States work. And a lot of these you could take online. It's not a live class, but a lot of them you could take online if you're willing to do online courses. But in order to offer our classes outside to Cambodia, so we'll have to have a good instructor, and also, it's going to cost money and so forth. But if you're willing to take online classes, most of these classes are available online. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Anything else? Everybody's good? So I want to thank you for participating for last four mornings for you. And I want to wish you a best successful as a buyer's representative, not just that, and as a real estate agent as well. And hopefully we'll be able to see each other sometime soon, somewhere in the world, maybe Cambodia, maybe United States. I remember that Realtor has a conference every year, and this year is in Orlando. So more information will be coming through your association as well. So, and if you have any question, you have my email address there, and you have my Facebook. Facebook is my name. So you could contact me anytime you want. I'll be more than happy to assist. With that said, thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day, rest of the week, and I wish for success in your real estate career, and hope to see you soon somewhere in the world, or maybe via Zoom. All right. Thank you very much. And if you have any question, you contact me or Yoshi, who came on first. He's our ambassador to Cambodia as well. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks so much.